I feel like he was managing for Tuesday, for Champions League.
But that's
when he went off, every Napoli fan celebrated. When he went off,
of course,
the first thing I did was say, okay, now they don't have that dynamic guy to beat his man one-on-one.
I think Kvaratskhelia leaving was a big question mark for all of us. So what's this Napoli going to look like? Tony even mentioned, like, when a big player like that leaves the locker room, it feels like kind of like the juice is gone, the excitement's gone. I think a lot of those guys took that personal. Like, when you look at their faces, McTominay after the match, you look at Politano probably had one of his best games in a while. Like, he was inspired by something. I'm not saying maybe it was Kvara leaving, but I think guys took the piece of what he brought, and they all put a piece of extra weight on their own shoulders. Even Lukaku at the end. And a team, when you look at these two teams and you line them up and you look at all the metrics and you see how many goals Atalanta scores, you can't say that this Napoli side is more talented than this Atalanta side. It's not even close.
Tonight,
when a team with Juan Jesus, Lukaku, who's not in his prime anymore, without Kvaratskhelia, without Osimhen, beats Atalanta away from home, you have to look at only one thing as a manager. And when you look at the managers, you see Antonio Conte. It's no mistake that one manager won 8 trophies, 5 of them being domestic leagues, and the other one never won.
But to be fair, Gasperini has Antonio Conte's number. If you look at the record, Gasperini has always played really tough against Conte. The last time it was 3-0 out, so it's not just that.
We can talk about football you want. At the end of the day, when you talk about sports, some people, some players, some managers, some organizations win. We talk about Real Madrid all the time on the show when we have Champions League. Sometimes they don't even play the best seasons. They played against Man City. They got dominated. They win. When you look at this Atalanta side, they're built. They have everything they need to win at home with a 1-0 lead. Find a way to lose. So some people will find ways to lose, and some teams will find ways to win. So and this Napoli side with very little is winning all the time.
Though, Grella, Napoli or
the team that gets 3 points for me is always the best team. Always the best team. And I thought in a lot of moments, Atalanta
That's not what you said about Napoli. How many times? When they won 1-0, you didn't say they're the best team. So it's not just that. No, they played better football as well. It's not just because they won.
I'm not sure they played better football today than Atalanta.
They did. Yeah, they wanted it way more than Atalanta wanted it.
They were hungrier. There's no doubt about it. You look at them. They're efficient. Right? They only took 6 shots on goal today. They scored 3 goals, right? So when you play in a counter-attacking mode, sometimes you don't get a lot of opportunities, and you've got to be really efficient in front of goal. They were hungrier. There's no doubt about it. I think you're absolutely right. You can go one of 2 ways when someone leaves your dressing room, a big personality. You either take it, you know, as a downer and you lose something in your stomach, or you have a chip on your shoulder. And I think that's what we saw today. And look, if you play for Antonio Conte, you know one thing. For 90 minutes and 90-plus minutes, you got to go all the time, and you find ways to win games. The guy just does it year after year after year. Keep in mind, he's got no Europe. I think the biggest mistake here today was Gasperini and the substitution patterns he made. When he finally, he goes down 3-2 after he takes players off, and we're sitting in the green room going, where's he going to get a goal now? How's he going to come back at home? How is he going to make this a game again? Because he took his most prolific players. Now, Retegi's one thing. Okay, we understand. Coming off the injury, he probably was on a minutes restriction. No problem with that. Then you take Lookman off the field, and likely because you have Champions League on Tuesday, you're looking ahead.
To play for a draw in that moment? Is that why you were saying, okay, let's sit in a bit. We'll be happy with a point against Napoli? Do you think that was the thought process behind these subs?
I don't know about you guys. I surely hope not. If you have a chance to win the Scudetto, you're at home in what is now the biggest game of the season, and you're playing for it doesn't seem like it's in Gasperini's DNA for me. I don't know about you guys, but that for me would be a big mistake.
Yeah, the moment that we saw that, you started to have the question marks around it. And, of course, the players that they put in. Charles de Catalara is a player that's been amazing. He had 2 assists in the last match against Napoli, so it's not like he downgraded so much in the match, but you thought maybe he wouldn't make those moves, especially Lookman, as you mentioned, because Retegi's coming off of injury. We had to know that his minutes would be managed. But I think it comes down to the spirit of Napoli. Honestly, for me, that's what this came down to. Even at 2-2, you could feel that they were going to be the ones to push on and get to 3-2. And it was intelligent. It was smart. Lukaku had to work the entire match. He was getting hit by Hien for 90 minutes, and then he finally gets this one moment. It was the niftiness. You look at McTominay and you look at Anguissa, the seasons that they're having, the way that they're winning the balls from Atalanta. For me, they were just more clever. They were smarter. They picked off their opportunities and knew that they could put danger of Atalanta by the deficiencies that team has, especially when they try to build out of the back. So for me, that's a storyline that Napoli were just better than Atalanta.
With all that character, it kind of is a bit reminiscent of the Scudetto winning season, because the season before that, they lost their big 3, didn't they? And everyone thought, oh, how is this Napoli going to look look this season? Are they going to be able to compete for Champions League? That was realistically the goal, wasn't it? And then the way they came out, Grella, with so much character, feels kind of like
it
what
is.
we're seeing
That's a great point, Papi. It is a great point. But that team that won the Scudetto under Spalletti, they wore tuxedos and they were smooth and they had their dance shoes on and they were fantastic and they played really...
Not towards the end.
Really pretty football. Not towards the end. As soon as we cursed them, we went over there. But they played really pretty football, really smooth. I mean, they were the standard, right, of what football was. These guys are, back alley brawlers. They got street clothes on and brass knuckles on and they're ready to fight every single weekend.
So why don't you love them? That's right up your street.
If I was, and I say this every week, if I was a manager, I commend what Conte says. I'm against sometimes when managers talk about, Mota sometimes bothers me about this whole system about how they're going to play and what they're going to sell you on. Amarim the same, comes in and selling you, we need time and this and that. Sometimes you got to be Antonio Conte in a situation where you're not going to have a lot of time and you got to win football games. And I think Del Piero, we had on before, made a great point and said, when you win football games, you start to get momentum and you start to get good vibes in the changing room. It's exactly what Napoli has done, is exactly what Antonio Conte done, is he just made them serial winners. You look at their attitude and their reactions at the end of the game, and there's so much grinta and passion, and that's down to Antonio Conte. And if you have to pick one guy out of this lineup today, and the best move that Di Laurentiis made is to bring in Antonio Conte. And the fact that teams like Milan could have probably had him, teams like Juventus could have probably had him and passed on him for whatever other reasons is crazy, because with very little at Napoli, he's winning and he is proving a lot of people wrong, including myself. With Marco, I didn't think they would be this far into the season. Now, I don't think we saw the odds before the season. Inter are still the Scudetto favorites, right? And the way that Inter play football, I would still think that they are. But this far along in the season, with the difficult schedule coming up, Atalanta being the first of now, Juventus, Roma, Lazio, Inter, Fiorentina coming up, they've already passed test one with flying colors. I thought this would probably be the most difficult game for them. To come away with a win there is mind-boggling.
And how about that stat as well that we showed of Antonio Conte a few weeks ago, Marco? I think you brought it up, the second half of the seasons. When you look at what he's won domestically, it almost blows you away with how good they are.
So that's my point. Obviously, I was high on Napoli, but I didn't think that they would be this high into the table at this point. I thought the gap was going to start to widen when Inter and Atalanta go further into the Champions League, and there's a little bit of tired legs. And as you mentioned through that stat, Conte, when he sniffs a little bit of blood, when there's blood in the water, he's going to kill. He's going to have his team riled up in March and April and May come the end of the season. The fact that he's this high along in the process is what's really special. And when you look at the numbers, you look at where Napoli were last year. Again, 10th place. They had 34 points after 21 games last season. They have 50 points right now. That's 16 points improvement, and there's no more of this BS. Oh, the Napoli, they won the Scudetto the first year and then went down to 10th. No, he doesn't even have the same players. Osimhen left in the summer. Kvara left in January. Kim has been gone for a long time. Zielinski left also in the summer. He lost massive pieces. He's doing this with players that most of us counted out, and he's also improved many players. Zambo Anguissa is one of them. For me, man of the match. 2 assists tonight.
He was fantastic.
He's got his best goal-scoring season ever in a top 5 leagues. So people criticize Conte. They say, oh, do players get better under him? He gets the most out of players, and Anguissa's a perfect example of that.
You asked before the game if Napoli wins this, is it over? And we all said no. And I still think that. But there's something that tells me in that Atalanta dressing room, this is a little bit demoralizing, the way it happened today, right? It was so efficient from Napoli. They realized that a team that will grind against them is really difficult to break down. There were some frailties in this Atalanta side. We started to talk about maybe for the last 15 minutes, maybe some tired legs, all the competitions traveling to Saudi Arabia. Eventually, all this stuff catches up with you that Antonio Conte doesn't have to deal with. And we've said from the start that would be a massive advantage to him. But I'm just thinking, if I'm sitting in that dressing room at Atalanta right now, what I'm feeling at the moment.
Are you feeling like they're out of the title race?
I'm feeling like we just let this massive opportunity at home slip away, where we could have laid down a marker today that, yeah, we are absolutely in the title race. And now all of a sudden you start thinking, well, we got Champions League to deal with. I think they play Tuesday, right? You have all of these games coming up. Now you start, there's a little bit of doubt, is what I'm saying, if you're sitting in that dressing room.
A lot of doubt, I think. And you have to look at their last game they play against Inter, Juventus, where I thought they were very good. They were in control, the 60% possession. They pushed Juventus back. Juventus had to defend and hit on the counter, and they get nothing from the game. They only get a point, right, at home. Then today, you think, okay, what an opportunity. They're going to come. They're going to play their football, and they lose. They come away with nothing at home in an opportunity where they can close the gap to 1 point. And For Gasperini, you have to wonder now, no team, no champions can play 90 minutes the same type of football. So when you're winning 1-0 at home, right, and you have Napoli on the back foot, you have to change something. Which means maybe don't play into Ederson facing his own goal in his own corner. Napoli were waiting for those moments to pick off balls. They press the ball high. If you're Gasperini and you can't see that in different moments of the game, hey, let's go. Let's play a couple short ones, suck them in. Let's go behind them. And then, okay, fine, if we turn it over, let them break us down. Let them come and have to make 30, 40 passes like we have to do and break us down. Instead,
he's never adapted like that, though.
They played right into the... And
especially
that's
after
why he doesn't win.
what do you mean? He won the Europa League last year. But after
one trophy
after 15
in how many years?
Yeah, but you can't compare with what Atalanta has at his
disposal.
disposal.
This was his opportunity.
But 15 minutes.
This season was his opportunity.
Mike, 15 minutes in, you can't say that. Mike, yeah, Grella. 15 minutes in, you can't adapt. You can't say, oh, we have to start defending. That's not in their DNA.
Not at all. Not defending. But maybe let's not play into areas where they're setting traps for us to go two passes.
But that's how you get the most of Atalanta. It's by playing like that. Yes, it's risky, and we've said it many times. They've gone to Anfield and they played that way. They did it against Bayer Leverkusen. Everyone said it wouldn't work. When it goes well, it goes incredible. When it doesn't go well, this is sometimes what happens. But for the most part, this style of football also got him to beat Antonio Conte on many occasions.
Can we flip it a little bit, maybe, and talk about it from a Napoli standpoint? You used the word trap. What's a trap, right? Where you know where if they play into these certain areas, this is where we're going to go.
Exactly.
Right? And you don't know if the team that you're playing against is going to play there. But when it goes, boom, we go and we press, right? We steal the ball. So maybe we flip it a little bit and talk about it from Conte's side. The one thing Conte is never going to get outmanaged, especially when you talk about managing a game, moments in games, when we have to sit back. The guy's not too proud to sit back and play on the counter and have guys just really old school, just work and work and work and outwork you. He's okay doing that. In the end, that's why he wins.
Do you think even when he saw the substitutes, he saw Retegui go off and maybe more defensive players, the attackers come off, do you think he thought, we're licking our lips now if we were Conte and the players for Napoli because now the game is back in their hands?
Poppy, I think he probably thought Retegui at some point was going to come off because just coming off the injury, he's going to be on some minute restrictions. But when you take Lookman off...
And Samardzic.
Yeah, Samardzic, right, who's playing in the number 10. Lookman is the one guy, as we saw in the goal that he scored, he's the one guy that... Even when Lookman plays poorly, right, there's a moment where he can dribble you and take you on and make a moment of magic, you know? I still think, Mike, he was, I feel like watching the game, we don't know, we're not in the dressing room, I feel like he was managing for Tuesday, for Champions League.
But that's
when he went off, every Napoli fan celebrated. When he went off,
of course
the first thing I did was say, okay, now they don't have that dynamic guy to beat his man one-on-one because what he creates out of nothing, Lookman is an absolutely special player.
This is out of nothing.
He really is remarkable to watch.
Just back to your point.
But they brought him off to put on Zaniolo.
Though, is Atalanta, they play Sturm Graz. They're in a great position and they're at home this week. So it's not as if they're on the cusp of making it to the next level of Champions League. They've got Real Madrid away. The thought process behind a game like, you don't want to take anything away from any team in the Champions League, but a game against Sturm Graz makes you scratch your head a little bit.
But maybe, I don't have it in front of me, but are they near maybe that game where they can get in the top 8 where they don't have to play the extra 2 games?
Well, they have 11 points, so they need at the minute the cut-off for the teams that go through without the playoff is 13.
Right, so they're close to that.
They're close.
I don't know. That's how I felt watching the game. Of course, we don't know, but when you take the one guy that can break you down in an instant, when you already have to take your leading goal scorer and the leading goal scorer in Serie A off the field, we know that. Then you take your other threat off the field. I feel like, unless there was an injury, but it didn't look like there was an injury to Lookman. Different profile, I think, is what he went for. I think the scariest thing that I learned today is Conte from the start of the season, and I think rightfully so, he's put all the pressure off of Napoli. He said, guys, this team, they finished low. We need to get into top 4. Our goal is top 4. I don't think Antonio Conte would have gone for the 3-2 if his goal was still to get to the top 4. He believes in the Scudetto. And that's a scary thing for the rest of the teams around him. He's starting to taste it. He's seeing how close they could get. He's seeing also Inter is not as perfect as we built up. They also have deficiencies, and that he can grind this out. My biggest hope is that they don't look too far into this and say, oh, okay, we beat Atalanta. They still need reinforcements. Napoli still need reinforcements. I still believe they need a replacement for Kvara, and they need a center back. The fact that they're doing this with Juan Jesus, all respect to him, he's done really well for coming in.
you still need a better center back. Until Buongiorno's back, it's too risky to go on to this season where you could create something special. They could win their 4th ever title. I hope in January they don't overlook it and think that they could scrap by. They need signings.
Who would you bring in if you're Conte?
Chiesa up top. I think that's very easy to choose. And then an experienced defender in the back. If you could get an opportunity like Milan Skriniar maybe, who's out of PSG. I keep linking him to everybody because I think he's a top-class defender. I don't know. That's what they need to figure out. That's what they're paid to do. But I just don't want them to overlook that they're still getting the results. I think come deeper on into the season, you're not always going to get away with this.
Just very quickly, as to your point, Grella, what about Zaniolo coming on? Was that not good enough today from him as a substitute?
If I'm in the back line, if I'm like Hean or Jim City and I see Zaniolo come on, I say, okay, we're waving the white flag. we're not going for it anymore. And I see Lookman come off and I see Zaniolo come on. For me, it's great.
Would
it's craziness.
Scamacca be a big difference when he's back?
Scamacca's obviously a much different player than Lookman. I mean, excuse me, than Zaniolo. But yeah, no, seeing Zaniolo come on, I think even if you're at the stadium, you're like, you know, are we waving the white flag already? I mean, imagine how Antonio Conte felt watching the top 3 come out: Retegui, Lookman, and Samardzic. He had to go, oh my God, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
Right? He had to go, wow. And when they were playing into the feet, facing their own goal, and they knew they could only go 2 passes and score a goal. McTominay scores from 8 yards away. They had 1 pass, boom, goal. Conte's probably going, I can't believe this. I can't believe that they're playing right into our hands. He got out-coached Gasperini tonight.
Yeah, which is surprising, isn't it? Not often do we say that. We're normally talking about Gasperini being one of the best managers in European football.